From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the Library of Congress. If you haven't been here before, a special hello and thank you. I'm John Cole. I'm the director of the Center for the Book in the Library of Congress, which means I have the fortunate job of promoting books and reading on behalf of the library. We do this in many different ways around the country through affiliated state centers for the book and nonprofit reading promotion partners all over the country. And here at the Library of Congress, one of our favorite ways of doing it is right here and now, and that's getting authors of books that have something to do with the Library of Congress to talk about those books so I can hold them up and wave them in the air and let people know that the collections and hard work of the Library of Congress often results in real, live, important books that help shape all of our lives. This program is called Books and Beyond, and today we're lucky to have several other parts of the library as co-sponsors, including the American Folklife Center, the Prints and Photographs Division, which had something to do with this book, which you will learn about, and also the Publishing Office. And this book has been published in association with the Publishing Office, so you can see the various ways that the Library of Congress is involved with this particular book and with Rich Remsberg and his work. All of our programs are videotaped for later broadcast on the library's website, including this one, so I must ask everyone to turn off all things electronic. Also, we will have a presentation by our guest author. There'll be a chance for questions and answers, and there will be a book sales and signing opportunity here in this room roughly at about 1 o'clock. So we're hoping that you will participate in all of this, but I must tell you that if you ask questions and receive answers from our author, that you have volunteered to become part of our webcast, and we thank you in advance for your permission. I would also just like to make a quick point on the partnership part of this. The Center for the Book and the American Folklife Center, with help from both Prints and Photographs Division and the Publishing Office, but all other parts of the library, have been concerned for a number of years about the Library of Congress's rich New Deal WPA collections. And in fact, the Center for the Book and the Folklife Center were the lead library sponsors in a 1994 symposium on the topic called Amassing American Stuff, where we looked at what we had inherited and started to organize and took steps towards further organization with, of course, the library's website, in those days, the beginnings of American Memory Project being an important part of it. The Folklife Center took the lead a couple of years ago. It was, I wrote it down, 2008, in a continuation of this work, but yet an expansion of it, into the digital age, which we really didn't have in 1994. And that symposium was called Art, Culture, and Government, the New Deal at 75. But we also took another look at the library's collections, and this is a continuing saga and story. And to continue it for today, I am pleased to present Peggy Bulger, who is the director of the American Folklife Center. The Library of Congress has been lucky to have Peggy here since 1999, and she has done a wonderful job. And gosh, that Folklife Center has expanded since Peggy arrived. Let's give her a hand. Peggy?
Since I arrived, too. I got to go back on Weight Watchers. I don't know about you, but anyway, welcome everybody. Most of you are old friends, and you know a lot about our collections. But I wanted to say that this is not only part of a Books and Beyond series. It takes a village to present Rich, I tell you. It's also part of the Benjamin Botkin Lecture Series, which is sponsored by the American Folklife Center. And we at the Folklife Center do videotape these lectures so that they become part of the collections. And it's a chance for us to feature scholars who are documentarians, ethnographers who are doing cutting-edge work today, because 100 years from now, we feel like these webcasts will be extremely valuable to the researchers of the future. And so I'm here to tell you about Rich Remsberg, which I just found out. Actually, Rich worked with the American Folklife Center for many years as one of our faculty members for our Folklife Field School. He has a long and distinguished career as a researcher of images that capture and celebrate the American experience. And his book, Hard Luck Blues, which we are celebrating, features 200 photographs created by the New Deal's Farm Security Administration, showcasing American music and music making during the Great Depression. FSA photographers depicted a range of musicians sharing the music of everyday life across the nation, informal music making in migrant work camps, farmers' homes, barn dances. All of this, Rich worked very closely with prints and photographs and has mined our collections. And as you know, as librarians, we are very happy when these collections are used and brought out in new formats, and new audiences are able to access the collections here at the library. But Rich is also an Emmy Award-winning archival image researcher who works primarily on PBS documentaries, including programs for American Masters, American Experience, and Nova. His credits include Johnny Cash at Folsom Prison, Woody Guthrie Ain't Got No Home, and the Grammy-nominated CD box set People Take Warning. As a photographer, his work has appeared in the New York Times, in Newsweek, the Christian Science Monitor, and No Depression. And he is the author and photographer of Riders for God, the story of a Christian motorcycle gang. Wow. And I've got to get that one, too. He has served, as I said before, on our faculty, and we're very happy to bring him now to tell us about his latest endeavor. So, Rich, take it over.
Well, thanks. Thanks for only mentioning the good stuff. And thanks to y'all for coming. So I started this project in 1999, and the book is just coming out now. And in between, a revolution happened, and that revolution was the coming of age of the internet and big collections of images going online. That made research possible in a whole new way. A few months ago, I was talking with my friend Nick, and he was talking about the way large amounts of computer memory that we have at our disposal now has made scientific research possible in whole new ways. And he was saying that scientists can now ask questions like, what is the DNA of the ocean? I don't even know what that means, but it sounds really big and like something we couldn't do before. And I think we're seeing this expansion of inquiry in all kinds of areas, linguistic patterns and economics and epidemiology. I think we're seeing it everywhere. And with vintage photographs and sound and motion pictures, whether they contain hard data or something more elusive like atmosphere and evocation and mood, they offer the same. There's the same sort of fertile soil for making these interesting and fruitful connections now that there wasn't in the past. Before turning our attention to the Farm Security Administration, I'd like to show you an example of one of these fruitful connections that I've been working on that's been made possible by digital media and very casual encounters with digital media that simply were not possible 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. We'll start with learning how to use my computer. We'll start with this film clip. This is some of you might know the song Sally Ann. It's an Appalachian tune. It's probably the second song I learned to play on the banjo. this is a 1947 film clip of a young Pete Seeger playing the song. I'm sorry about all the clutter of the film credits, but if you can kind of look through those and just pay attention to his performance, or to the song, I should say.
Did you ever see a muskrat, Sally Ann, dragging his slick tail through the sand, singing a banjo, Sally Ann, I'm gonna marry you, Sally Ann, I'm gonna marry you, Sal, Sal, I'm gonna marry you, Sally Ann, I'm gonna marry you, Sal, Sal, I'm gonna marry you, Sally Ann.
Oops. Okay, so, most of you, like me, I suppose, grew up on the notion of folk music as coming from the British Isles to the mountains of Appalachia and bouncing around the hills there for a couple of centuries until they're this purified strain of folk music that steeped in anonymity and oral tradition. And it's only more recently that there was always a nod to the banjo being an African instrument, and there was that sort of tenuous connection of old time music to African influence, but not much more. And it's only in recent years that folklorists and musicians have really recognized how present the African strain is in old time music. So. Then my upstairs neighbor Norm gave me a pirated DVD for my birthday. This is Angelique Kidjo. Okay, so that blew my mind. I thought that is the same tune as Sally Ann, and I thought, the name Zélié is a cognate for Sally Ann, and there's another variant of Sally Ann called Sail Away Ladies, and Sail Away is even a closer cognate for Zélié, and it's the same melody, and so I began to imagine the 17th and 18th century environment where Southern white guys are starting to listen to the African music and picking it up either deliberately or otherwise, and putting their own understanding to it, and transmogrifying it into Sally Ann. And then I found this on YouTube. This is a Togolese singer named Bella Balo. So now my mind is really blown, and I'm really curious about the song. So I just did a Google search to see what I could find about the song, and I didn't find very much. But the one kind of interesting bit that I found was that it's a traditional Togolese wedding song, and there's that line in Sally Ann, "I'm going to marry you." Maybe coincidence, maybe it's not. I don't know. It's intriguing. Then about a year later, I was sick in bed with the flu. So I did what I always do when I'm sick in bed with the flu, and that's prowl through the online recordings at the American Folklife Center to see if I can find something cool. And I found this from, it's an Alan Lomax recording from, this is only audio, from his 1939 Southern collecting trip.
And then on the close of the sermon, the old sister started singing, "You cow died, throw him away, your mule died, throw him away, little dog died, throw him away, and everything died, must throw him away."
So this is a song that they would sing when they were opening the doors to the church and calling
On the
people
close of the sermon, we'd open the doors of the church
Sundays.
after they got through.
Yeah. And who would sing it?
Old sister in the amen corner.
Uh-huh. I mean, was there any particular reason for singing the song? Was that when at the opening of the church door?
Open the door of the church door, yes, according for church members.
And this the song that was used, she would use?
Yes.
Oh, and the words have
Would you
nothing,
sing it over
no
again?
relation.
Cow died, throw him away, the mule died, throw him away, the little dog died, throw him away, and everything died, must throw him away.
Okay, so I'm far from having like a publishable conclusion here, but I think it's really intriguing that I was able to just make these connections pretty casually over such a broad range of material. So with this last piece, it's something on American soil in an African American tradition that sounds like both Sally Ann and Zellier in a part of the country where the transformation would have been taking place. And this is the kind of connection that folklorists have always trafficked in. But again, as I said, just to be able to connect such diverse material through such casual inquiry, I think is something really new. And I think that it is by such connections now made possible that we can start to ask some of the cultural equivalents of what is the DNA of the ocean. So, all right, so on to the FSA and my book. Okay, I'm here in Newcastle, and I feel kind of funny talking about the coal. This book is at the intersection of two big parts of the Library of Congress: Prints and Photos Reading Room and the American Folklife Center. I'm assuming that most of you are pretty familiar with the FSA already. Is that right? Is that yes? No? All right. For those of you who are not, the broad strokes of it are: it was a New Deal initiative begun by Franklin Roosevelt in 1935. That was it was a financial relief measures for farmers and sharecroppers through a series of loan programs, relief, and model collective rural and suburban communities. And there was a small photographic branch to the program that was assigned with documenting the work that the agency was doing, and also the need for the work for them to do it, to lobby Congress. The man who was in charge of the photographic division was named Roy Stryker, and he had this ambitious vision to create an enormous visual index to American culture, really focusing on ordinary life. Not many celebrities or important politicians. It was all just ordinary people. Stryker had a really good talent for hiring good, mostly unknown photographers, and through all of their efforts and just one of those perfect storm situations that came together at the time, they in the 7 years that they operated, they really did create not only this vast index that Stryker wanted to create, but they set the gold standard for documentary photography. And then in the late 90s, the Library of Congress digitized the entire collection of 170,000 images and put it online. Their charge was photographing farming conditions, and then Stryker sent them out to shoot all this other stuff in small towns and farms and cities. And without specifically meaning to do so, the photographers created what is the best visual representation of roots music during that period. And that was an extremely important period for roots music, if you care about such things. It's one that we know largely by its creation myths of Robert Johnson going to the crossroads and Woody Guthrie traveling on freight trains around the country, and the Carter family, the birth of commercial country music. And what the FSA photographers do is give us a look at what was really going on beyond the myths of how ordinary people were really making music. The project has very casual origins. I was bored one day at work and started surfing through the American Memory website. Here's the whole story. I was making hot mix cover tapes, or hot covers for hot mix tapes. So I was seeking out pictures of musicians. Some of them I already knew from being a photographer, such as this one from Russell Lee, and some I knew from being a musician. That had been these shots that had been used as album covers. Then I started searching by keyword on fiddle and banjo and so forth. And this is the first image that I came across. And Samantha Baumgartner is her name, and I recognized her name from being a 78 collector. She was the first woman to record old-time music. She recorded in 1924 for Columbia Records. And I'd also seen a couple of her banjos in a very small museum when I was hitchhiking through North Carolina in the 80s. So I was glad to see a picture of her. Searched on, started picking other relevant keywords: drums, musical instrument, which brought up things as obscure as this diddley bow. This shot of the accordion and washboard player, which I already knew, but also this one, which I didn't. Then I searched on place names that I thought might yield some cool things. Alabama got me this. Delta surprisingly yielded nothing, but Pawn Shop did. Then I discovered what's, I think, the most powerful tool in the collection, and that's the see neighboring call number link. And with this, you can start on any image and click on see neighboring call numbers, and it shows you 12 or 20 of the images that come just before and just after by the numerical cataloging. And then you can click to the next page and the next. And this allows hours and hours of the tedious joy of flipping through thousands of pictures. And I really love that kind of thing. So, but more importantly, what this does is it allows you to see images where the caption information and the metadata don't have any clues about what you're looking for. So there's nothing. The caption for this image is Mr. Cicero Ward, Negro FSA client. So not much there I'm going to be searching on. But once you see the picture, it's very interesting and important. There's also then the opportunity to see all the untitled and unpublished photos. These are shots that Stryker never chose for publication during the FSA. So their only caption is untitled, so that there's no information about them. And that yielded things like this from Breathitt County, Kentucky. This, which is a shot I could look at forever, from Florida. This boarding house in Virginia, where Carl Malden's stunt double was sitting out the Depression, practicing his chops. This previously unidentified and unknown photograph of the great Cajun fiddle player, Leo Swallow. The other thing that it provided was the context, the near frames that provided the context for some of these shots. This is a very well-known photograph from FSA Histories. The New Lost City Ramblers had it on their one of their album covers. I think this was probably the first FSA picture I ever saw back at the Evanston Public Library when I was in junior high, getting excited about folk music, and I found the Ramblers' Songs of the Depression album. So, it's a well-known shot, but what I'd never seen before were these outtakes, I guess, if you will, from the same situation. And it starts to give a much more dimensional view of the situation that Shahn encountered. This is also from Ben Shahn. This is in West Memphis, Arkansas. Again, a famous photograph that I knew from being a photographer. But I'd never seen these, which reveal a number of interesting things, including a second person, a second musician. Also, this badge on his, I don't know if you can see this, but this badge right here, I'll show it on the other monitor too. This is it's a blind street peddler's license, and I think little nuanced things like that can really make a difference in both the fact and just the ambiance of the mood of an image. American Memory made possible also connections with other collections. Dorothea Lange identified these folks only as a migrant family from Arkansas playing Hill-Billy songs and gave their location in a California migrant camp. But I was looking at this picture and I thought, I've seen that mandolin somewhere before. And then I remembered where I'd seen it. It was in the Folklife Center's Voices from the Dust Bowl collection of Todd and Sonkin's material from California. So less than a minute on that site, and I found the picture that I was looking for, and I thought, hey, that's the same mandolin, and it's the same kid, too. And there's a bunch of other pictures of them and some sound recordings.
Folks, this is the King family playing the Kicking Mule with a tenor banjo lead. Picnic dinner all over the ground. Skipper's and the meat was 9 foot deep and a green pot walking all around. The biscuit in the oven was the bacon, was a beefsteak fried in a pan. Pretty gal sitting in the parlor, Lord God Almighty, what a hand I stand. Oh, damn mule, I tell you, Miss Liza, you keep cool. I ain't got time to kiss you now, I'm busy with this mule.
So, it's really becoming dimensional at this point, and there was also something in the caption about this family being involved in the film The Grapes of Wrath. So I got The Grapes of Wrath from Netflix, another digital resource that wasn't available 10 years ago. And sure enough, this is the band that's playing in the last barn dance scene in Grapes of Wrath. So then, back to my old friend Google, I found an employee newsletter where the featured employee of the month mentioned that his dad was in the movie The Grapes of Wrath playing music. So I sent an email to the guy because his email was in the employee newsletter. And within a week, he was the son of the mandolin player. So within a week, I was in touch with this 10-year-old kid who's now in his 70s, living in California. We had a great phone interview. Very interesting guy. And I think when we talk about the digital revolution, one of the things we forget is so important in that is email. It's such a simple thing, but man, it just opens up lines of inquiry in a way that was possibly before, but not as rigorously and certainly not as quick or as forwardable. I was able to make a lot of IDs of the people in the photographs. This shot's from Provincetown, Massachusetts, so I figured they were probably Portuguese. So I went to the municipal Portuguese festival in Provincetown, wrote to the info@ email link, and said, are there any older people in town who might remember these folks, know who they are? The guy wrote back, the festival organizer wrote back and said, yeah, my mother-in-law, you should talk to her. And so I emailed with her. She didn't really care about my project and kind of felt like I was a waste of time for her, but I did get some IDs for all these people out of her, as well as what kind of music they were playing, typically, which mostly cowboy songs. So the great Portuguese fishing traditional music of the Sons of the Pioneers. So, okay, so the first half is finding the images, and I love that part and could talk about it all day. But the second half of doing a project like this is then how to tell a story with these pictures. And this is such a deep collection that there's so many ways to read it. But I think most people start with just kind of a classic, classic impressions of the Great Depression, right? And this is the way that the FSA has always worked and always worked very well. Individually and collectively, I think these shots are extremely powerful. And I think they make, they form the bedrock of our notions of the Great Depression, our vocabulary of imagery for the Depression. But I think they work even more strongly than that, and that I think that we base a lot of our sense of our national character on this set of pictures. I think after that, kind of a music-specific layer begins to emerge. And you see things like this Salvation Army matron with her extremely cool Gibson L7 that most guitar collectors would go nuts to own today and wonder, what was she doing with that guitar? I asked my friend Dave Bass, who he's a vintage instrument dealer, I said, where do you think she got that guitar? He said, maybe someone donated it to the Salvation Army. Different styles of button accordions being played. I think this is an interesting set of pictures. This is, what's his name? William Wilson. He's in Westmoreland, Pennsylvania. He was an FSA loan recipient. And he just had what was, for the time, a really typical collection of musical instruments: violin, Hawaiian-style guitar, and Spanish-style guitar. I think that's just nice for the clarity of its typicality. This very cool resonator mandolin at a Sunday church revival in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. The old-style tack-head drums. I think this is the most important photograph in the entire collection, or the entire book anyway, the music photographs. Do you see the guitar player? Can you make him out? Let me point him out because he's easy to miss. It's not the clearest picture, but it's the most important. That's the guitar player there. And this guy right here. One of the central facts of blues music is Southern blues, anyways. How many of these guys were street musicians, right? And that they would play downtown for pedestrians or passing cars for change. And that's mentioned in all the literature, all the liner notes. It's talked about all the time. It's a very central fact to understanding the blues, but you never see an image of it. I'd never seen one before, and the only place that I've seen images of this are a few shots in the FSA collection. And this series from Marion Post Wolcott in Belzoni, Mississippi, I think is the clearest depiction of the whole thing, the context, the practice, the economics, the spatial dynamics. There, you can see him a little better there. To really get a visual sense of that phenomenon. And then when the different pictures begin to speak to each other, I think you start getting a good sense of the varied musical landscape that was going on in the country at the time. You have images like these, or musical situations like these, going on at the same time as situations like these. And these. Eventually, Ralph and I were just talking about this before walking over here. I think what really starts to happen after a while is the music component of the photographs becomes transparent, and starts to serve more as a lens to a larger sense of social history. So after a while, I think you're not even, you just take the music for granted and you're not really even paying much attention to it anymore. You start to see the living conditions and social relationships and economic things. And the music is always present, but there's just these layers and layers behind it. This is an interesting shot. You notice the drummer is a woman. I don't know who she was. I tried figuring that out. But here's the historic origins of the village people. I gotta say, working on this project, I had to give band music a lot more thought than I ever had, and I really started kind of getting into it. I still find the music painfully boring, but the social history surrounding it is super interesting. You know, the ethnic diversity of all these. They're playing for a merry-go-round. And another kind of social history thing that starts to happen then is challenges to our received notions of history. Wealthy people during the Depression. This shot's an interesting one. It's used a lot. It's such an iconic photograph of small farmer losing their land, being relocated, being dispossessed from their land, which is in fact what's going on here. But it's not a bank foreclosing and the Jode family mythology that goes along with it. It's the U.S. Army is relocating them because they're building an army base on their home, which still is fraught with political overtones, if you like. But it's a very different set of mythology than the injustices of the tenant economy and so on. This is, I think, a very interesting set of pictures. I talked a bit about these last time I was here. Again, Ben Shahn, Scotts Run, West Virginia, 1935. He identified this guitarist as a doped singer, which I take to mean he was on drugs, and through kind of a dialect-style writing, made an attempt to convey the way that he sang the song "Careless Love." He didn't make any comment about the guitar, but I thought it was an unusual-looking instrument. It's got the slotted head and the herringbone pattern on the binding. And then when I saw this shot of Ben Shahn's, also from Scotts Run, West Virginia, the same day, I noticed the guitar. I thought, could these guys be sharing a guitar? The white guys and the black guys. Is that going on? And you want to be careful about not letting desire lead your research too much. But I was really intrigued with it. So I poked around through the neighboring call number feature to see the other images from that shoot that day. And first I found this. So it's both groups of people in the same frame. And then eventually I found this, where the two guys are actually making music together with the common guitar. So there's still a lot of questions about this if you're trying to draw conclusions. How much of a role did the photographer play in getting the two groups together? What were racial relations like in Scotts Run, West Virginia in 1935? Was it typical across social and economic class lines? But I finished the essay in my book with this that I'd like to read for you now. The photographs produced under the FSA reflect the remarkable contributions made by the musicians of that period, preservers of tradition and aesthetic innovators whose influence was not only enjoyed in their own time and communities, but would eventually be felt and appreciated across lines of race, nation, class, and generation. For many years, only a relatively small number of the FSA photos were widely seen, what Dorothea Lange referred to as strikers' cookie cutters. The photographer's own viewpoints were different and wider. These other photos bear witness that there was more complexity to the Great Depression than bread lines, dust storms, and, well, depression. At its best, music rises above the borders imposed by politics. I hope and suspect that most readers will consider the climate in which these images were created, but ultimately enjoy the lasting work of these remarkable artists. Here we have an opportunity to see people hit hard by the Depression, not with pity or constructed heroism, but with a real sense of appreciation. In the midst of extremely difficult lives, they created something of genuine lasting worth and beauty. So, how are we doing at time? Do we wrap up at 1? Is that right? Okay. Maybe we should call it there. Before we open up for questions, I would like to thank a number of people who made both this talk and the book possible. Ann Bonney, Beverly Brannon, Peggy Bulger, Ralph Eubanks, Carl Fleischauer, Jan Grenche, Nancy Gross, Todd Harvey, David Taylor, Helena Zinkum, and the staffs of the American Folklife Center, Center for the Book, Prints and Photos Reading Room, and the Publishing Office. If you've gotten anything out of these pictures, you are, as I am, indebted to all of them. So how about giving them a hand? Okay. Questions or other thoughts?
I'll go first.
Yes.
I'd like to go back to the musical examples that you played.
Okay.
At, sort of 10 minutes into your lecture. You played 4 of them. One was Anglo-American, the Sally Ann.
Mm-hmm.
The next 2 were from Africa. It was interesting to me, and you probably already realized this, that both the Anglo-American versions and the 2 versions from Africa of this tune are completely pentatonic. That is,
Yeah.
they are scale degrees 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and the octave above it. But the very last example you played, which was the African American calling in song at the church, that one had a flatted 7. On the very end of the phrase. Now that flatted 7th and the flatted 3rd are known.
That's what
as
makes the blues, right?
notes,
Right.
The blue notes. And I find it very interesting that the only example you played with the blue note was the African American version, while both the Anglo-American and the African versions were strictly pentatonic.
Very cool. Take it and run with it. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Photo-wise, I wonder if you looked at or used in your book any of the color photos.
Yeah.
One of the ones that you showed twice here, there's a color
Right.
version of the same shot, which we used on the cover of Folklife Center News.
That's right. There's that. Actually, the 2 of them that I showed in here, both in the same situation. Oh, I'm sorry. It asked. The question is whether I looked at any of the color images. The FSA shot about 1,600 color images in addition to the 170,000 black and white ones. 2 of them two of the shots that I showed here, the originals were in color, but for reasons of cost and continuity, we just made them black and white in the book, and I did here. Yeah, there aren't that many related to the music. These 2 shots are, and then there's some others of like juke joints and stuff that are pretty cool that Marion Post Wolcott shot. But there's no musical performance in them, and I didn't really get into musical environments, and it just made. There were a number of things that I had to cut editorially from the book. There's no photographs of the Puerto Rican musicians that were extremely cool, or any of the OWI years, and so I just had to trim all that stuff out. So. But they're great, and if you're interested,
those color photos are OWI at that point.
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, most of the 1,600 are. A lot of them are Jack Delano's study of Chicago and the gearing up of the war industries. But they're great photographs, and if you're interested in them, I would just point you to the online collection and browse through them. There's also a book called Bound for Glory of the selections of the color FSA OWI photos. They're great. ¿Qué más? Nancy?
Of the 170,000, how many are related, how include music? And also, you don't include much on dance, but there are also a large body of...
Yeah, there's quite a few dance shots. I didn't include them for a few reasons. One is just to keep it focused, and the other is I don't understand anything about dance, and it would just be dangerous for me to start trafficking in that too much. But mostly it was a matter of focus. The other things, there's no audience shots. Like there's a shot from Iowa of the audience at a fiddler's contest. Like, great, what are the nearby shots of that? And there's none. That's like the only shot from this town in Iowa. It's just the audience. And, they're ethnographically important and academically important, but I just had to make a viable book out of it too. So I just had to focus on things where there's tangible musical performance. The other thing that is missing here are situations where, I guess I'd call them like sociological situations where it's likely that there was a musical component to it, like Gandhi dancers, the guys laying track. I'm sure they were singing somehow, but it's not really verifiable visually. So I limited it to things that were verifiable visually. And and again, the dance shots are great, and I hope somebody picks it up and does something with them. I mean, those get used more than the music photos do. There's that famous jitterbugging shot of Marion Post Wolcott's that you see a lot, and there's some other really good, a lot you don't see a lot. But yeah, they're great things. But I was out of my depth and had to focus. So in the back, and then you.
I appreciate the sharing your experiences doing historical research over the internet and just finding your way and being a detective and the uncertainty of it all. And you shared a little bit with us of eureka moments, finding an instrument and running with it, as you say. What was it really like for you when you got on the telephone and found this young man who was in the grapes of wrath? Now he's 70 years old, but also I'd like to know what his reaction was when you called him.
Yeah, did y'all hear the question? What was my feeling in the detective work and the tracking people down? What was it like when I finally connected with the guy who was in the grapes of wrath? Now that he's an adult, he's in his 70s, and what was his reaction? Mine is, I just love doing that kind of thing. I love the sport of research, and for me, and I do that professionally. I'm doing this all day, every day, and where I really love it the most, the sweet spot, is where I can combine conventional, legit, nerdy academic research of knowing the record groups at the National Archives and some esoterica about a cataloging system, combined with what some old guy has in his basement, and just kind of that really unconventional searching through eBay and these weird collectors networks, and combining those things to get them speaking to each other and create some synergy that way. So when I found this guy, of course, it was super exciting. He was happy to talk to me. His kids were kind of more excited about it than he was. He was never that interested in playing music, was one of the interesting outcomes. It was something that his dad was more interested in, and just kind of made the kids do. And then because it was the Depression, they played in movie houses and taverns and stuff for extra money. So, he had a connection with it that way that was important, but he didn't especially enjoy it. He played clarinet as he got older, and he doesn't play that much anymore. He's a square dance caller, like Western style square. And occasionally he gets out his clarinet and plays it, but he didn't have a deep attachment to it. The story that I loved that he told, he was kind of a rambly old guy, which I mean only in the best way. And so because I asked him what about just the questions you'd expect of what kind of work did you end up doing, and so he was telling me the story about, this was after, I guess it was after the Depression. They were still living in Central California, not very far from where this photograph was taken. He was, I guess, a teenager, maybe his early 20s. And he says, Al Cap, the cartoonist? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, his plane had to make an emergency landing in whatever the town he was in. And he had to get down to Los Angeles. So he hired me to drive him down there. after that, so at this point I'm expecting this to be, he became Al Cap's assistant and he worked in cartooning or publishing or something. He says, I like driving pretty well. So I got a job and worked at AAA. And he worked at AAA for like 20 years until he had to retire on disability. And so, it was just, it was just very surprising. You just never know what the end of the story is going to be. So, sure. They'd seen the Todd and Sonkin photographs, but they'd never seen this one. Yeah, so.
I was wondering, I haven't looked recently, but did you forward to Friends of Photographs the names of the people you identified?
I'm happy to do that. When I was down here doing some research, I talked with Jan about it, but that was like 5 years ago now, 6 years ago. And she said, why don't you do it when the book's done? And now the book's done, and we can work it. Everybody I was able to identify is in the book. The most tenuous ones were at the Fiesta in New Mexico, because the woman I was relying on, she's pretty old. I think she was in her 80s or 90s, and she didn't speak English all that well, and we had a hard time communicating over the phone, and her handwriting was very wobbly. And when she identified people in the pictures, they contradict from one picture to another. So I summarized that as clearly as I could in a footnote somewhere. But anyway, all the IDs that I have are in the book, and I'm happy to fill in anything else that I can for you. So, yeah.
You mentioned just a second ago, you like the sport of research.
Yeah, unlike sports, which I don't like, but I do like the sport of research.
Well, it's interesting because you're doing something a little bit different than just amassing like a data set or something like that. And so I guess my question is when you go into something like this, aside from maybe just publishing a book or making sure that things are factually accurate, or I don't know, exposing this to more people, what's kind of your scholarly aim, and how do you know that you've succeeded?
Yeah, my scholarly aim is modest. I feel what I'm good at is finding pictures and providing a little bit of context. In this case, I think providing some context about the FSA for people who know the music history, and providing some music history for people who know the photographs. As far as interpretation, I like to kind of stay out of the way. I've put in a little bit because I think there's some things that I observed that you might not notice, and it's appropriate to do so. But I don't like to go overboard with interpreting. I think readers are smart, and they can read things into it once they're on their feet with some context. And I think that's a failing of most art history and photo history books, is that they're overly interpreted and they die in the process. And I'm not an academic, so I don't have any academic ambitions. But the real origins, after I made my hot mix tape covers, and I started seeing this as something bigger. What I thought was, these are great pictures. I think it would be a cool project and probably useful to other people to put it together. And now that it's done, that's still really the way that I see it. Is I hope people enjoy it, and I hope they can use it. But I don't have a deep interpretation of what this means, of the semiotics of the Great Depression. I'll leave that up to individual readers. I think that's part of the I think that's just the best part of the process, is not standing in the way of other people doing that. And these pictures are good enough; they just don't need that either. So, I don't know, does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Have you got any hot mixes for sale?
Every year I put out the CD for Christmas and New Year's of the best 78s in my collection, and I usually do it for Christmas, but I've just got it done like last month, so I've got one. I'll give it to you. So. Dave?
Rich, since we're old buddies, I know that one of your other sports is junking, what you call junking, and I know that there's something that happened in the last year or so that kind of brings this story to full circle with regard to you and your interest in music and your connection with the library. Would you mind talking about that? You know what I mean?
With the discs? Yeah. Okay. Got a friend named Brad, and Brad is an obsessive collector and an obsessive guy, and he calls me every few weeks with some obsessive tip on somebody I should hook up with. And he called me about a year ago and said, "Hey, I met this guy Sanjit. He's a house flipper up in Bennington. You got to meet this guy. He's got a house full of stuff up in Bennington. I can't make it, but you should go up there." So, and Bennington is Bennington, Vermont, about 25 minutes from where I live in Western Mass. So Lisa, my wife, and our friend Levin and I, who goes out junking with us, we went up to Bennington and met with Sanjit and saw the house. And this house is completely trashed out, and you know, a lot of the houses we go into at for estate sales, and it was mostly junk. But there was a room full of junk, buried under which were a lot of 78s. I don't know how many boxes, a lot of them, almost all of which were very common and uninteresting from a collecting standpoint, the Dorsey brothers and, you know, big band stuff. But there was one box that looked pretty intriguing, and it had this kind of interesting calligraphed address on it, and I opened it up, and it was aluminum and acetate transcription discs, and there was a letter about, what do you think of my air check, or something like that. And well, these look kind of cool. So I picked those up, and Levin found a lamp and some old Bakelite stuff, and Lisa got a couple things. We took it all out to the truck, and got into a pretty interesting conversation with Sanjit. I'll save that for another occasion, but he was a pretty interesting guy. When I just kind of introduced him as the house flipper, that's unfairly dismissive of him. He was a pretty interesting character. Anyway, we're checking out on the bed of the pickup truck, and he's adding everything up, and he gets to this box of records and says, "This is the really valuable stuff." And I said, "Yeah? What is it?" And he said, he looked kind of blank. He said, "I don't know." I knew he didn't know. So anyway, I brought him home, and I played the first one, and it was a pretty hot harmonica version of the Fox Chase. And most of these things had no labels. There were a few labels on them, but not many. And I thought, I probably shouldn't play these until I know what they are, and can play them on some cleaner equipment than what I own. So I got online and started using the little bit of information that I had to see what connections I could make, and it very quickly led me to a discography that Ann Hoog made in the Folklife Center. So I emailed her and David and Michael and said, "Here's what I've got. What do you know about these?" And Ann and I corresponded for a little while, and she said, they're copies of Lomax recordings that your guy bought in, I forget what year. We've got the receipts of them here in the archive for his sales, and he bought them for the betterment of his neighbors, I think was the phrase. So that was pretty great. So she said there should be 11 of them. I said, well, that sounds kind of cool, but there's a lot more than 11. There's like 40 or 50 of them. And she said, we've only got records of 11 of them. So she and David, Michael, and I started talking about them, and we're not sure what they are, but Ann found some more information, said it could be that your guy did some field recording in Alabama in '36, but he knew Lomax. We don't really know how. We don't know why he was in Alabama, but we should take a listen to these and see what they are. So anyway, I brought them down. They're under the table over there. So none of you people steal them. Anyway, I'm going to I'll hand them off to the Folklife Center, and they're going to clean them up and listen to them, and we'll see what we've got. And hopefully it's going to be some original recordings from field recordings from Alabama in 1936. Hopefully Sam Collins, but we'll take anything we got. So thank you all. I'll stick around for a while if you want to come up and continue talking after the bona fide Q&A allotted period. I'm happy to sign books, shake your hand. Just hang out. So thanks for coming.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.